Hi, welcome to my first YouTube episode of My Autoimmune Path. My name is Jen, and I'm going to be talking about my diagnosis with ulcerative colitis. So, as I mentioned on my intro, I have lived with this disease for approximately 30 years. I'm in my early 50s, and I was diagnosed at age 23. It was in the fall of 1995. I finished college in the spring of 1994. And then I went that fall, I moved to New England. I had a job with my denomination to do some campus ministry work. And so I am from the Deep South, in a state that's right off the Gulf. And so it was a long way from home, long journey. But I was eager and excited about the work that I was going to be doing. And it was just going to be for basically a year, or kind of like the school year. The job was structured around, college students. So it was just for their school year. Not too long after I had arrived and kind of gotten settled with things, I caught a stomach bug. I was part of a church, a small church, with just a few families. And one of the main families, they had several kids. And anyway, the stomach bug kind of ran through the mix in their family. And I guess I caught it. And I think the family I lived with, there was a husband and wife and their young son, who was about, I'd say he was about maybe a year old, something like that. The baby probably didn't get it, but I think the husband and wife did. And it was a pretty rough one. And I feel like when you catch something and maybe you're traveling, you're out of the country, or you're in a different part of the country than where you typically live, it can be worse. I don't know. That's kind of my theory. It's just you're maybe kind of introduced to some different germs than you would normally be around. So it was pretty intense. But typically with stomach bugs, you're over it in 24 hours, maybe 48 hours. And that was just not the case. I just kept having these kind of episodes, and it was really kind of a mystery of just what was going on. After about 2 or 3 weeks, I went to the local hospital, to the ER, to just see if they could help me out with some diagnostic stuff or whatever. I don't remember exactly what they did. They may have taken an x-ray or something like that. I don't think it was along the lines of a CT scan or anything. But the doctor was actually really nice. He and I will say this, I think this is very typical of New England. They are very practical and no nonsense. And, they're going to give you something to hang your hat on. Like, he was not going to let me leave that ER without a game plan, which I was really thankful for. And so he encouraged me to do a specific diet called the BRAT diet, B-R-A-T, and it stands for bananas, rice, applesauce, and toast. And, those foods are all very easy to eat, easy to digest. And the theory behind it is just that it would give your gut sort of a gut rest and maybe kind of a reset, I guess. So I tried that, and I think things were a little bit better, but nothing just incredibly dramatic. So so I kind of limped along through the semester, and I do remember, a couple of things about it. Like, one thing that really stood out to myself and my mom is that when I would call home, and cell phones were brand new back then. I did actually have a cell phone, but it was not like these days where we're just on our cell phones all the time. And so I had a bag phone, which, just was really for travel. It was so powerful. I always joke that, you could probably call up to the moon or something with it. But when I would call home, just, on an average day, I would be using a landline, and I'd be talking with my mom, and we'd just be having a nice chat. I'd tell her about some of the, new and different things that I was experiencing up there in New England. And then all of a sudden, things would start rumbling. And I would just have to kind of interrupt and say, uh-oh, Mom, I better go. I gotta go. I gotta run to the restroom. And that was just really weird. Like, it was just a very different experience than I'd ever had. But that kept happening a lot. So, of course, she was concerned because she was just thinking, what is going on here? So, because of all that, I got an appointment when I came home for Christmas, because since we were doing campus ministry with college students, we had the same break as, they would normally have. So typically, college students get a whole month off between semesters. And so I drove home and was with my family for about a month. And I ended up going in to see an internal medicine doctor during that time. Having already graduated from college, I couldn't really go in to see my pediatrician anymore. So it was just kind of time to get established with an internal medicine physician. And so I did that over that Christmas. And, but I have to say, I probably didn't share as much as I should have about those symptoms that I was dealing with. I think I was just kind of embarrassed. I'm pretty shy by nature, and it's somewhat of a sensitive topic to bring up. And so I think my mom was a little bit frustrated with me. She didn't go with me to the appointment. She has her own, or had her own, autoimmune disease. She has since passed, but she had a very serious case of rheumatoid arthritis. And so it was hard for her to get out sometimes and go places. And by then she was not driving anymore. And so anyway, I had just gone by myself. But I think she had really wanted me to bring all of that up that I'd been dealing with. And I may have mentioned a little bit, but probably not to the extent that I should have. But I will say that it was good, at least, that I was established with that doctor. And that would come into play more, down the road. So when I went back to New England, after Christmas was over, drove back and was there, that next semester from January to May. I was dealing with some same issues. And also, I started on a medication at some point. I'm not sure exactly when, but I had seen my dermatologist about it. I wanted to start on an acne medicine. I didn't have just terrible acne, but when you've been dealing with it since you're about 12 or 13, I was really kind of just over it. And so I had the mindset, I guess, back then that, it would be kind of not a cure-all, but just that, I could take that and I wouldn't really have to deal with blemishes on my face too much anymore. And the thought of that was, I really liked the thought of that. I just wanted a clear face and wanted to look nice and all. So I had that medicine with me from my dermatologist, and, had the kind of protocol of how to take it. You would start with one dose and then titrate up to the next and so on. And I don't remember exactly the course of it in total. It was, I know, at least 6 months, but probably more like 8 or 9 months. And so I don't think that medicine really helped things. It just seemed to kind of make my gut worse. And I'll share another story about that here in a little bit. But anyway, kind of just muddled through the semester, and when I got home in May, things really got bad. I've mentioned that I live or am from the deep south, and it gets extremely hot here in the summer, just like it might get extremely cold up north in, say, Minnesota or South Dakota, somewhere like that. We get extreme heat and humidity. People die every year from heat stroke down here in the South. And it can very, very much tax your body. And so I think what was going on is that I was dealing with this autoimmune disease that was, coming on, rearing its head. And then it was incredibly hot. It's so easy to get dehydrated just for anyone, even if they're healthy. And then if you're having to go to the bathroom all the time and you're losing fluids that way, because if it's, a watery bowel movement, you're losing liquid or water, whatever, out of your kidneys, where you're urinating. You're losing it through sweat, and you're losing it through your bowel movements. And so it's so easy to get dehydrated. And I just felt so run down. And I did not work that summer. And that was a blessing. That was a good thing that I didn't, because I just really needed at that point to be close to home, close to a bathroom. And I just needed, frankly, to get a lot of rest and to be able to hydrate. But anyway, my next phase in life was to go back to school to get another bachelor's degree. And so I went to a different university than the one that I had originally graduated from, but it was still in my home state. So it was about 3 hours from where we lived. And I moved up there in August. I had an apartment, got settled, and was really having a tough time of it through all that process with my gut. I started school, but shortly after starting school, and let me back up. My mom and I had talked about me needing to probably go back in. Like, we had discussed this over the summer, about me going back in to see that internal medicine doctor who I had gotten in with over the Christmas break. But you know how it goes. Sometimes, you might be able to get right in with cancellation, and sometimes it can be 2 weeks or even two months. And so we had scheduled the appointment, but it was a little ways out. And it wasn't exactly at the most convenient time. It was for the day after Labor Day. So I had, started school and all of that. And then I remember driving home. Well, I came home for the Labor Day weekend, and my parents and I actually went to the beach And I remember it being fun, but I also remember being in the bathroom a lot and just, feeling really, really run down. And so I guess, that Monday we got back from the beach, I went back up to school. And then it was a lot. And I probably just should have missed class that next day. But we were so, the semester had just started. And I just really didn't want to miss class. Because, that's just kind of the type of person I am. I just try not to miss class. And so I went to class that morning on that Tuesday, the day after Labor Day. And I got out of class probably about noon, and then went straight and got in my car and headed home. And I didn't go home to my parents' house. I just drove straight to the doctor's office. And I don't remember what time my appointment was. It was probably for something like 3:30. And so got in, saw that physician who I had, met over December. And, I think by that time, after kind of living with those symptoms for about a year, I was just really done. In contrast to kind of how it was in December when I saw him, and I didn't really mention everything to him. This time it was like, okay, Katie, bar the door. I don't have anything to lose. I'm just going to throw all my dignity away. He needed to know everything at that point. And so, he was asking me a lot of questions. Are you having blood in your stool? Yes. Are you having mucus in your stool? Yes. How many times are you going to the bathroom a day? I don't even remember. It was probably something like 8 times. And so I just remember his eyes got really big. And he said, I tell you what, hold on just a minute. I'm going to step outside and check on something, and I'll be right back. So, I just sat there and waited. And he came back probably in about 5 or 10 minutes and said, if it's okay with you, I would like you to see a colleague of mine who is a gastrointestinal doctor. This was, a fairly big group, and they had internal medicine doctors, and they also had specialists. And so he said, he can see you today, like right now. And I said, sure, that's fine. My goodness, I was there. I needed to just get seen, get it taken care of. And so I met this other doctor who's a gastrointestinal doctor, and I do remember him asking, what medicines are you on? And really the only thing I was on at that time was that strong acne medicine. His eyes got really big as well when I told him that I was on that. And I didn't have that much longer with the course. I probably only had about 3 weeks left on it. But he told me, he said, do not take another pill of that. So I didn't really ask him why, but I just assumed that it was not going to be beneficial for my gut. And I'm not sitting here saying that caused my disease, but it certainly, I think, had really aggravated my gut all those months prior. So I just thought that was interesting. But he actually did a scope on me that day, a sigmoidoscopy, which is they go up the left side of your colon. And because I had driven there and needed, to be okay to drive home, they didn't sedate me. So that was pretty rough, because they did some biopsies. They took some biopsies. And he said, this was on a Tuesday. He said, I will call you at the end of the week. And so they were going to run the biopsies and see what they showed. And I think he was, maybe hoping that it would have been something that you could treat kind of short term with a medicine, like maybe a bacterial colitis, or I don't know exactly. But maybe he was thinking that stomach bug that I had gotten, all those months before when I had first moved up to New England, had maybe never fully gotten out of my system, etc. But anyway, he called me on Friday. It was late Friday afternoon. I always just kind of chuckle at that these days because not too many doctors work on Friday afternoons anymore. But this was, again, 1995, 30 years ago. So he probably called me about 5 or 5:30. And he said, well, I've got the results of your biopsies. And unfortunately, they showed that you have inflammatory bowel disease. And he was fairly certain that it was ulcerative. You can say it ulcerative, you can say it ulcerative, but colitis. And so that was pretty devastating. Like, I still just remember that moment, being in that apartment that I had just recently moved into. I didn't have a ton of furniture. I was sitting there on the floor. My landline phone was on top of a cardboard box. I remember just kind of sitting there by the box, leaning up against the wall. And I remember the doctor saying, you will have this for the rest of your life. And just how overwhelming that felt. I mean, he was a very nice man, a very kind doctor, a very intelligent man. And I was grateful for him those first few years of my journey, my path. But that was a hard moment. That was a really hard moment. In addition, I had a friend in high school who had ulcerative colitis, and I don't know exactly when she was diagnosed. We got to be better friends towards the end of high school, so more, in like senior high rather than say junior high. But she was probably diagnosed in junior high or maybe very early high school, say something like 9th grade. And I had seen her struggle with it. She would get inflamed and flare probably about every 6 months. Typically, she would have to go into the hospital. They would do a colonoscopy on her, and then they would usually start her on IV steroids. And then she would come home, continue on oral steroids. And it was just a lot. She would miss school. She'd have a lot of makeup work to do. The teachers were always very understanding about it, and they really worked with her on that. But it was hard. It was a hard thing to have to deal with, on top of just being a teenager. And so when he told me that that's what my diagnosis was, of course my mind flooded back to my friend. And it was scary. It was really scary. So he also wanted me to start on some medicine, which, of course, right? We got to get a treatment plan going because I had been untreated for about a year. And he thankfully gave me a choice. One was to start on steroids, on things like prednisone. And then that was not, something that I really wanted to do. And the other choice was to start on a medicine called Asacol. And I don't believe it's on the market anymore. I think it's like, that was a brand name. It's called like Melsalamine or Mesalamine. But anyway, it was these hard kind of tablets. And the way that they were designed is that they would not break open until they got down to your large intestine. And when they broke open, then it would release the medicine and coat the inside of your colon and, be very healing. But anyway, I wanted to go with that option because, it had less side effects and everything. And he said, that's fine. We'll try that. And, we'll save the steroids if for some reason this doesn't work. So he called the prescription in. Just, I guess, right after we got off the phone. It was ready the next day. I went and picked it up. The dose was 12 pills a day. So that was 4 pills 3 times a day. And you would take it, in theory with every meal. It was a lot of pills to swallow. It really was. It was just a giant pill bottle that I picked up from the pharmacy, and thank goodness my parents had excellent health insurance at the time, because even back then, I think out of pocket or without coverage, the cost would have been around probably $600 for that amount of pills. And I don't remember the copay, but it wasn't much at all, maybe $25, $30. So what a blessing for that. But I began taking them. I was very, very faithful in taking them, and tried to always have some with me. My mom ended up getting me a little key ring. It was like kind of a key fob thing it was like a stainless steel small little canister that had a screw top at the lid, and you could put several, pills down in there. And so I just kept that on my keys at all time. So even if I was somewhere else and needed to take a dose, I had some. So that was helpful. But I was very consistent with taking it. Did not miss a dose. And it took a while. It took probably about 3 or 4 weeks. And just gradually, I began to see things shift. There was one morning in particular that I remember. I'd gone to the restroom, and there was no blood. There was no mucus. And the bowel movement was, looked pretty normal. It was formed, and it wasn't diarrhea or anything like that. And I was just so overcome with gratitude. I just remember that distinctly. And I'm a person of faith, and so I just kneeled down on the floor of the bathroom and literally just gave the Lord so much thanks and praise for allowing that medicine to work in my body. I remember I saw that GI doctor some months later, I think, for just sort of a checkup, to say, okay, how are things going? How is this medicine working, etc. And he told me that there was another girl, lady, female, whatever. We were young then. She was a college student, and technically I was too, even though I already had one college degree at the time. But we were about the same age, and he had seen her around the time that he had seen me, and diagnosed her with inflammatory bowel disease. And yet she had gone the steroid route, and she still wasn't any better. And it was really sad for me to hear that, but it made me so grateful that medicine had worked for me. It enabled me to sort of get my life back. And especially being brand new at that school and starting a new degree program, I really needed that. I did eventually have a colonoscopy. If I remember correctly, it was not until that next summer. I think the doctor wanted to give my body time just to kind of calm down and heal. And, colonoscopies are so incredibly invasive. Plus, just being in school, just logistically, we needed to have it scheduled at a time where I could feasibly do it. And so I will say, though, I probably was flared up slightly. I think it was, like I said, that next summer, because I remember him telling me that I had a lot of inflammation in the upper part of the colon, like almost to the small intestine, which that would indicate possibly me having Crohn's disease, because Crohn's disease affects the small intestine. Colitis affects the large intestine. But for whatever reason, and I'm sure he had scientific reasons, he just ended up putting me in the colitis camp. But that medicine that I was taking, was designed to just treat the large intestine. So if I had some upper inflammation, there wasn't anything that was really covering that, wasn't really treating that. So that was probably also why I had some inflammation up high. But it's just kind of an interesting thing. Like, I've always wondered, do I really have Crohn's? Do I have colitis? Do I have both? I think some people can sort of almost like have both. Inflammatory bowel disease can be really, really complicated. But anyway, the medicine that I was on, it helped me so much, and really gave me several years there where I felt good. I felt fairly normal, and didn't have too much problems, and didn't have to take steroids, at least those first few years, which I'm very, very grateful for. So that is my story of my diagnosis all those years ago. A lot of details are very fuzzy and forgotten, but a lot of them still are pretty clear and distinct. And, I just don't think I'll ever forget that experience. So there you go. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch. And also, if you would subscribe to my channel, I would be so grateful. Thank you for watching My Autoimmune Path.